Hi, I'm Ken Hartlage. I'm from Pepperell, Massachusetts, and this is my pipeline story. I'm the president of the Neshoba Conservation Trust. That is a local land trust here in Pepperell. And we are stewards to about 40 odd parcels that comprise about 400 acres in this town. We learned about the pipeline when we received a letter in January of last year from Kinder Morgan, indicating that they wanted to survey property that we own. A very beautiful property, wooded acres that then roll into a farm, one of the last farms in Pepperell, in fact. And that farm then rolls into the Nashua River. So we've got a beautiful mile-long stretch of land that we acquired a few years ago. We put a conservation restriction on it specifically to preserve that land for the use of residents here, for visitors to Pepperell who come here expressly to enjoy the outdoors, and for the farmers who are working that 38 acres that go into the Nashua River. So as you can imagine, when we received the letter that they wanted to come and survey the land, and then we learned what it was all about, which is to put it in a natural gas pipeline right through our property that was going to require a clear cut of 100 feet in width and a permanent easement, clear-cut easement of 50 feet in width that was going to bisect this property the full mile in length. We weren't happy. So probably like many others that received similar letters, we started asking questions, Googling the internet, if you will, calling people that we knew that might have some awareness about this. And the long journey going from no knowledge to well, some reasonable level of expertise, or at least what we pass for as expertise, began. So between that January letter that we received and now, we and our colleagues across the state have come quite a long way. We formed a coalition here right in Pepperell under the banner of Neshoba Conservation Trust, expressly for the purpose of fighting the pipeline. The Neshoba Conservation Trust Board adopted for land trusts quite a unique perspective on this, I would say, that we not only opposed the pipeline, we expressly opposed it in lieu of just trying to have it moved off our property or moved off conservation land. So we took a rather unique approach to that. What we didn't want to do was to have the pipeline moved off our property and then take our problem and make it somebody else's problem. Because it is actually the community in Pepperell that supports the Neshoba Conservation Trust that gives us the funds in order for us to acquire properties. And it just didn't sit right with us that we might take the perspective of shifting this pipeline from us to somebody else who is one of the very supporters that helped us acquire the property. So we took the stand that we were going to fight this pipeline, and we quickly found others with whom we could do that. I think probably the first thing that we did is we tried to educate as many of the folks here in Pepperell as we could about it. We've had multiple meetings here in Pepperell, and I'd have to say the support that on the approach that we took, which is opposing the pipeline, is near unanimous, in fact. So we took that then, and under the Neshoba Conservation Trust umbrella, started a broader community effort under the umbrella name of Stop NED, Stop the Northeast Direct Project. So that took us outside of Pepperell to start to include the towns of Groton, of Townsend, of Ashby, of Dracut, of Tingsboro, and I'm going to forget some of the other names, but Dunstable, and basically quite a lot of Middlesex County, as well as our neighbors to the north in Hollis, New Hampshire, who are also interested in fighting the pipeline. So we've got now, between 10 and 12 communities that are working together under the StopNet umbrella with the express purpose of opposing this pipeline and organizing efforts to educate the public and have them get engaged in trying to put a stop to this. I think if you look at the sort of approach that StopNet has taken to this entire initiative, they have expanded upon the original proposition, if you will, or the original position that Neshoba Conservation Trust took, which was to oppose the pipeline, and complemented that actually with not only the opposition of the pipeline, but promoting a clean energy future. So this is really a dual position then, which is to stop the pipeline in the first instance, but also you need to substitute that with something, right? So if you're going to stop pipeline that's bringing in natural gas, what are you going to substitute that with? And so we've taken the position that we would like to see more investment in renewable energy, such as solar, wind, but especially energy efficiency and energy conservation. Which we've been learning all about this year, has actually been a major contributor to the Massachusetts economy. I think there are probably 100,000 odd jobs in clean energy today, many of them in the energy efficiency world, if you will. And it's also something that everybody can agree on. You know, let's reduce the demand on the electric grid, and by reducing the demand on the electric grid, then by default you need less gas, or you need less coal, or you need less nuclear power in order to keep everything humming along, keep the lights on. So for a lot of us in this group who are very quickly learning about energy efficiency, this became really one of the causes, if you will, that we are championing as part of all of the meetings that we have throughout the towns, and we try to let people know that they should be contacting the folks who are doing the energy efficiency assessments of homes and such, and see what they can do in terms of contributing to that. So, you know, changing a few light bulbs in your house, you know, to LED individually, you know, may not make a lot of difference, but if you put 20,000 homes with LED light bulbs, or 50,000 homes with LED light bulbs, well then, you know, that can be a very significant difference, and really reduce the demand on the grid, and start to make very compelling arguments that we don't need any additional gas. In fact, we wouldn't really need any additional sources of energy if we can control the demand on the grid. So,
how many acres does Neshoba have here?
The Neshoba Conservation Trust has about 400 acres that we steward.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's also in addition to several thousand other acres that the town of Pepperell has under conservation. And in fact, it's not just Neshoba Conservation Trust land that is affected, but it's actually town conservation land that is affected. In fact, some very beautiful parcels that we have protected not only here as a community, but also receive state funding to protect, because they're considered quite special in this particular area. And of course, within Pepperell, it's not just conservation land that we're concerned about. I mentioned before about homeowners and the impact that this pipeline would have on them. We think that there are anywhere between 60 and 100 homeowners that could be affected. It's probably 60 on the mainline pipeline, and then another 40 more that could be affected as a result of the proposed lateral that's going up into Amherst, New Hampshire.
And how many of these towns now that you're mentioning have passed resolutions to try to stop the pipeline?
Well, there's about 39 towns in total that have across the state, and I certainly know that right in this region, Townsend was the very first one, Pepperell, Groton, Ashby. In fact, Ashby might have been the very first one. I believe Tingsboro may have as well. So most of the towns along the pipeline route seem to be getting the support from their community in order to pass these resolutions, and that's very encouraging. Of course, what we're also hoping to do is to try to educate the towns that are outside of the pipeline route itself. And if we can do that and have them pass similar resolutions, that would be fantastic. In fact, I just read recently that Brookline, right outside of Boston, Brookline, not Brookline, New Hampshire, passed a very similar resolution to keep additional gas infrastructure out of Brookline. So the word is spreading. They're directly affected by one of the other pipeline proposals, as are some other towns like Roxbury and such. And so hopefully more and more of them will be doing that.
And what political steps have you taken, besides meeting and passing these resolutions in terms of your elected officials?
Well, part of the success of the campaigns that we've had has, and I'll just describe those in a moment, but we had set up two objectives principally. If you'll recall, the original justification for this pipeline was initiated by the 6 New England governors to try to bring in additional gas to keep the grid operational, or what they perceived to be as necessary to keep the grid operational. So the 6 New England states were joining forces, if you will, to procure additional gas, and they were proposing to exact a tariff on ratepayers in order to fund in arrears the purchase of that additional gas. And if they can purchase that gas on firm contracts, that would give the pipeline company the necessary contracts for them in order to fund the building of the pipeline. So we undertook the initiative to try to put a stop to that tariff, and that was a classic grassroots campaign that was done by our homeowners, and not only here in Pepperell, but in towns in this region, and actually towns across the state. That culminated, if you will, in a statewide march, which I'm sure many of your other interviewers have discussed thus far. Pepperell was one of the towns that participated in that, and in fact, a few of our folks here were instrumental in actually getting that up and running. So that as you know, statewide march led to a meeting with the governor, at which point in time he agreed to re-examine the tariff itself, as well as what we were calling an examination of the need for the gas in the first place. So popularly known as analyzing the low demand scenario. But what that really meant is, do we need to procure additional gas? And if we do, how much do we actually need in this area? So that study actually is being undertaken as we speak. So the success actually in terms of that political action was a direct result of grassroots efforts that really did two things. One, it had a number of voters across the state making our elected officials aware of opposition to the pipeline and wanting to do something about the state's desire to try to procure that gas. But it also amplified the voice of a number of conservation groups that have actually been raising this concern for some time. So there have been organizations like the Conservation Law Foundation, ENE, and others that have been bringing this issue to light with elected officials for years now. And while we are sort of latecomers, if you will, to that because of our direct impact as a consequence of the pipeline, I feel like we've been able to work very closely with them and help amplify their message and make that message heard by the administration and elected officials. And the outcome so far has been very positive. What we're moving to now, actually, with the pipeline company Kinder Morgan filing at FERC, is now needing to take the battle to that front, if you will, to try to make the argument that this area, Massachusetts, New England, broadly, does not need this additional gas infrastructure, and specifically this Kinder Morgan pipeline. So that's where we're turning our attention to as we speak.
Yeah. How many citizens live in Pepperell?
Yeah, I think we're right around 12 or 13,000 people in total. Yeah, so we're sizable. Yeah, we're sizable, which is one of the reasons why we have a fair number of homeowners who are directly affected. I mean, if you go west of here, you know, when you start getting to Ashby and the towns from there, so then they're much lower in population. So yeah, Pepperell was doubly in fact impacted, as I mentioned before, because we not only have the mainline pipeline running through our town, but we also have one of the proposed laterals running through our town.
Yeah. And so, your Board of Health, your town's meeting passed the referendum to not let the pipeline come through Pepperell.
That's correct, a unanimous vote. We had over 400 people attend a special town meeting.
Wow.
Yeah, well, and that's a credit really to the grassroots effort that we had to educate the public, make them very aware of what this pipeline would do to our town. So we educated them in respect to the destruction of our natural spaces. As I mentioned before, many of whom who had contributed significantly, not only in direct funds, but also in labors of love, if you will, to protect these properties. We had many homeowners who were being affected by this, and you know, these were people's neighbors who were being affected by this. There was concern about potential devaluation of homeowners' property, and for many people, as you know, this is your home is your main source of investment, or your main investment, and potentially a source of income, you know, as you reach your retirement years and what have you. And so, you know, that too was a concern. And furthermore, as we've indicated and continue to educate the public, there's no guarantee that bringing in this additional gas is actually going to lower gas prices or lower your electricity rates. So it seemed to be all pain for us and no gain. And, you know, frankly, that's how a lot of people looked at it, you know, that we would be paying the price to enrich a $1 billion company based out of Texas, you know, and there was going to be no benefit to us, but all downside. So even if you were not as concerned about you know, climate warming or what have you, and you're just looking about the impact to your own backyard, your own neighborhood, your own community, there were mostly negatives and very, very few positives.
So, probably most everybody or everybody has not allowed them to survey, would you say?
Yeah, I think we're over 50% denial rate here. And it could be considerably higher. I'm not sure the exact number, but there may have been a few people, but I'm pretty sure we're in a fairly high percentage of folks that wouldn't have denied.
Yeah.
That would have denied, excuse me.
And I know
the survey.
also we learned at the summit Saturday about the compressor stations, that there's probably going to be a lot more and a lot bigger and a lot worse than they've ever let us know.
Yeah, and that's a main concern to our neighbors just to the west of us, Townsend, because Kinder Morgan has indicated that they would be putting in one of those compressor stations. And I don't remember the exact configuration, but it seemed to be pretty large. In fact, just last week, I toured a few of the sites that they speculate could be sites for this compressor station. And as you might imagine, these are conserved open spaces, you know, that once again, people have invested time and money to ensure were left open, held in conservation, preserved for this generation to use and for future generations. And it's very likely that if this pipeline goes through, that one of those properties would be taken. And it's a shame. It's really a shame, because this is not, when people donate land or people invest money, invest time to have land held in conservation and preserved for future generations, having a pipeline run through it, or a compressor station or a meter station, you know, that just isn't part of the equation, and it's really shouldn't have to be. It's just not right.
I've heard that compressor stations could be anywhere from 50 to 75 acres in size.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard the same thing, and you've seen, through some of the documentation that's been circulated, and Steve Wick's film as an example, they can take up a considerable amount of land, and of course there are going to be abutters who are going to be exposed to light pollution and sound pollution, not to mention the blow-offs that occur on a regular basis. So, yeah, it's not going to be a comfortable situation for anybody that's in proximity to those pipelines or to the compressor stations. And in fact, the safety issue is one of the main concerns of a number of the homeowners here as well. One of the founders, if you will, of the Pepperell Homeowners Association, Danina Vincent Primus, they have the pipeline going not 100 feet, 150 feet from their son's bedroom window. And that's a scary situation for them. It's a scary situation for anybody to have something like that so close to you, despite the protests by the by the pipeline companies in regard to their safety record. It just doesn't add up.
Yeah, and going forward, do you have plans as a group or as an organization, homeowners or Neshoba Trust?
Yeah, so as I mentioned just a few moments ago, we're sort of moving our influencing efforts, if you will call it, our campaign efforts to a statewide and regional level now, with the express purpose of making it known to FERC, the regulatory body who would be responsible for approving or denying the certification for this pipeline, making our case before them. So we're working in concert with organizations across the state. So we're part of the Massachusetts Pipeline Awareness Network. So we're working with them. We're working with folks in the North Quabbin area. We're now joined by a much larger group of people in New Hampshire, seeing as they are now one of the proposed pipeline alternative routes. And folks as well, from Connecticut and elsewhere that are going to be impacted not only from this pipeline but other pipelines that are being brought into the area. And there is just large opposition to bringing in additional gas infrastructure. And we know it's an uphill battle with FERC. We know that they have a tendency to want to approve pipelines, but we think that we've got some pretty good economic arguments to make that this pipeline isn't needed. It's overbuilt. It's not going to serve our economy. It's probably destined mainly for this gas for export purposes. And we think that there are other solutions that can be brought to bear to meet our energy needs, and we're going to put as strong a case as we possibly can and enlist the support of our elected officials, our appointed officials, and see if we can't keep this pipeline out of Massachusetts.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.